This is TWiT.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I am Ant Pruitt, and I am the host of Hands-On Photography here on TWiT TV. I know you got yourself a fancy smartphone, you got yourself a fancy camera, but your pictures are still lacking. Can't quite figure out what the heck shutter speed means? Watch my show. I got you covered. Want to know more about just the ISO and exposure triangle in general? Yeah, I got you covered. Or if you got all of that down, you want to get into lighting, you know, making things look better by changing the lights around you. I got you covered on that too. So check us out each and every Thursday here on the network. Go to twit.tv/hop and subscribe today.
I run, for instance, a Mastodon server, which is essentially based on ActivityPub via GNU Social and Identica and Evan Prodromo. And, you know, there's a long history. But the idea is you run a server. You could run a server just for yourself, but that's kind of a heavyweight thing to do. But you run a server, and then you can put stuff up on the you know, you can toot it, as we say in Mastodonese, and others can follow you from any other server. It's federated. So that's kind of I understand the federated notion. In fact, my first question to you when we started emailing is, well, why didn't you do something on ActivityPub?
And so ActivityPub and Activity Streams are super interesting. They were an attempt to open up Twitter, an attempt to sort of revive that vision of Twitter, which had been federated briefly, and make it real. But ActivityPub has a few problems. One, they never really addressed the issue of verifying content, like who did this thing. You have to trust the federated nodes. There's no way to move between one federated node and another. So if I want to, you know, say, oh, if mastodon.social gets deleted and disappears, then everyone who knows that I'm Rabble at mastodon.social loses track of me. I lose track of them. And there's no way for me to have private messages either individually or in a group between people, between servers. So you have to completely trust whoever's running your server there. And so there's a privacy problem with that, but also it means that you can't just do new message types very easily. You can't build new kinds of applications. So on Scuttlebutt, you can play a game of chess, or we have a clone of GitHub, or, you know,
how interesting.
There's a recipe share everything. It's, you know, you can build any kind of social app on top of it. Now, what Planetary does is a pretty traditional social feed type thing where you can link between data and collaborate. But there are a lot of different ones. And, you know, Planetary is a iOS app, but there are Firefox plugins, and there's Miniverse, which is an Android app and iOS app. So, and you can take your account, your cryptographic keys, and go from the Planetary app and put it in any of those other apps. And then you get different algorithms and different feeds and different structure of what kind of data you're playing.
So right now, so when Mastodon,
that is critical.
That's great, because when Mastodon.technology is shutting down as a big Mastodon server, and a lot of people are migrating, and you can migrate, but you have to tell everybody, this is my new fully qualified address. I now live here. It's a complicated process, and you're right. You're not really taking everything with you. All I take now is my key. It's a private key system. Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's an ED25519 key. It's the same, you know, it's, you know.
You're laughing, but that's the best key. That's the key I use for my SSH, by the way. Instead
you would
of,
know. You know.
Instead of
I don't
TWiT
know. You know.
2004, I use an ED21959. So, okay, so you have a key. And by the way, the nice thing about that key pairs are small.
You don't know.
Yeah. You don't care.
Yeah, it's super small.
Yep.
And, you know, you have, you know, we have these identity servers. So like you can go to rabble.nz and it'll take you to find me. But my actual identity is this key that exists on this peer-to-peer network. It works offline. I don't even have to have an internet connection. If two phones that have the app, or a laptop and a phone, are in the same place, they'll start syncing directly without any internet connection at all.
Wow.
And we've done experiments with Scuttlebutt nodes that sit on the back of trucks that work by NGOs that drive between villages in Brazil and in Africa.
Oh, that's really important.
Sync to people's phones where there's no Wi-Fi, there's no cell phone service.
Huge.
Everything can go down. The protocol keeps working.
So it's fully distributed.
Yeah.
You know, for a long time, I used a Keybase account to kind of as a proof of identity. Same kind of the idea, but they had to host it. and people had to know I was there. This way I can keep my own keys. Do you run do you run something locally or do you choose a server, or does it matter?
You run something locally. So in Planetary's case, either on the Mac, because we're a desktop app too, or in your phone or your iPad, it stores your keys in your Apple keychain and it gets backed up on iCloud.
Okay.
And then it syncs. Speaking of Keybase, did you know that there's a keys.pub, which is one of the Keybase guys who's gone and rewritten Keybase, but based on modern technology?
Oh, hallelujah.
Based on 25519 keys.
Keybase was a sad story of a wonderful site that got bought by Yahoo, Zoom, rather. It's almost as bad as Yahoo. And it's still there. So this is, so he kept it alive. Okay.
Yeah, so this is, nice. I'm not sure exactly who it is, but some of the Keybase people have gone off and built this thing, keys.pub, which is a rewrite of Keybase.
Nice.
Which it needed because it has legacy. It's fantastic. There's not a large ecosystem around it yet, but I'm super excited about it because it lets us do that thing we could do with Keybase.
So can this interoperate with Scuttlebutt somehow?
It's on our to-do list.
Yeah. Because that would be the goal, right? I mean, we've talked about this a lot. Stacy used to call it the blob, where you have a proof of your identity. And you can use that everywhere. I mean, I guess it's kind of passkeys is sort of trying to do that. You can use that everywhere. But more importantly, you use that to control your personal information and data and, I guess, content and anything else you want, and keep it. It's yours. You share it in any way you want with anybody else, but it's yours. And this really is a solution. I don't know if this is what Tim Berners-Lee is thinking about with his ideas, but this is really the solution, is for you to own your data.
Your vault.
Your vault. Yeah.
And Solid, which is Tim Berners-Lee's new thing, is one of the ways that working on it. The other major insight that I got working on this is that the data isn't the most important thing. Like, the reason Instagram and Twitter even Tinder lets you download all of your data is because that's fine. The data isn't the valuable thing. The connection between people and the ability to connect to them, address them, and find them is the important thing. And so that's the thing we need to protect and also make sure are in the hands of users.
So Rabble, Leo, it's Leo's show. This is not a democracy.
No. I want you to ask questions.
Because I want to put something out here. I want to jump ahead to come back. Where I want to end up in this conversation, there's so much to go here. But is two things. One, I'm eager to hear your views of Blue Sky and what they've just announced and how that fits into this ecosystem or does not, point one. And then point two, with whatever in the ecosystem, Scuttlebutt, Planetary, Blue Sky, et al., if Elon Musk, with his sync that he took into the lobby today, flushes all of Twitter down the drain, and there's kind of disaster bat signal, and that was what the discussion was with Mike Masnick and Daphne Keller was, oh my God, what do we do? Who's in a position to do something? Bat signal, Rabble. So I'm eager to hear I don't know, in whatever order, your vision for what could be an alternative and what that looks like, and what does it mean to interoperate, and what does it mean to get our social graphs, what does it mean to hold on to those connections, and so on, and then how these things fit together or don't.
So absolutely. So for folks that don't know, Blue Sky is a independent public benefit corporation that was funded a couple years ago, or proposed a couple years ago and funded last year. It's got $13 million of investment from Twitter, but it's Jack is the chair of the board of Blue Sky. It's an independent organization, and the goal is basically to follow through with Mike Masnick's article of protocols, not platforms.
Right.
That Twitter should be a protocol. We should make something that's like Twitter as a protocol, and then people could build on top of it. That's something that I've advocated. It's something that Jack advocated early on that didn't end up happening. I went into Jack and Biz and pitched Planetary before we were announced to raise, before Blue Sky existed, and say, look, we need to do this protocol thing. And there was this giant debate with Twitter lawyers about whether or not they were allowed to invest and whether or not Twitter was allowed to invest, and Biz ended up investing, but Jack didn't. But the idea stuck, and it's a good idea. And first, it's, Blue Sky is small. They're a 3-person team.
Right.
It's, Dan, Paul, and Jay. Jay and Paul were both Scuttlebutt developers. Paul also worked on the DApp protocol and worked on the Beaker browser. Dan was working on IPFS stuff with this company called Fission Codes. Like, they're all great folks and they're doing great work, but it's a teeny team. And I'm super excited about where that protocol is going. Now, there's some design differences that are between Scuttlebutt and and the app protocol, which are a little different. The app protocol uses keys and signed logs, and a lot of the tech is the same, but it uses relay servers. But unlike the Fediverse relay servers, you have a root key, which you can move your identity from one server to the other. So it inverts the control, which I think is the important thing there. And it then has a space for not all of the feed algorithms and the spam stuff happening on device, but you can outsource it to cloud services. Say, I want to use Twitter's recommendation algorithm, or I want to use Planetary's recommendation algorithm, or I want to use, OpenAI's recommendation algorithm.
Or I can start a whole new company to make just be in the business of recommendations, and you can pay me for it, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Or and so I'm super excited about the app protocol that's coming out of it. I've been involved with Blue Sky not as an employee, but as a collaborator since before it was announced. And this, it's a great team of people, but it's a teeny team that's it's based on the idea that don't get big fast. Get a small group of people who have a long history of being able to figure this stuff out and work on it and build something interesting.
But we have an emergency,
unfortunately,
one could say.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I wish that we were going a little bit faster. But I also wish that Planetary was going faster. Like, every time something comes in the news, I'm like, why haven't I solved that memory leak problem? And why, Scuttlebutt has 2 feed encoding formats. One doesn't let you delete. That's terrible. And we've got the code for the one that lets you delete and the one that lets you do scalable private groups. So you can say everybody who follows me can read my messages, but no one else can. But we haven't deployed that yet because this stuff is hard.
How much investment would either or both of you need to scale into something significant, to be able for people to export things into you and continue life?
I think we need, I think Blue Sky's $13 million is the right kind of initial investment to get a basic thing working. We only raised $1.5 million at Planetary. $10 million would actually get us there. We could have an Android app, we could have a full web team, and we can move forward a lot faster. But you work with what you've got. One of the tricky things is when I've gone to investors, everyone loves to talk to me because they like to hear the Twitter stories and whatnot. But also, they're like, I'm sure you could build the tech, but how do you get the users? How do you get the users in a lockdown ecosystem where Apple and Google control the app stores and make the rules? How do you get the users where you've got a few big players? And that's a hard problem. But my answer is always be that the big players are going to continue to screw up and sell themselves to Elon Musk, or have, Instagram change it so nothing in your feed is something you follow. And that's going to drive people to look for something else. But the something else has to work.
And what's interesting and maybe makes it hard to sell is that something else is kind of amorphous. It could be a variety of different instantiations. I think the real selling point here is you control your identity and you own your identity.
And your graph.
Yep.
Yeah.
And your graph.
And your graph.
Your connections.
Yep. So the graph one is fascinating. So if we just publish in public all of our contacts and graph and who we know, that's a terrible idea because it's like spam and privacy and all sorts of stuff. But the answer to it actually comes out of this thing called private set intersection, which was the algorithm that Apple and Google used for their COVID contact tracing app, where you can securely check who do I know in common with you. And now that we verified we know these people in common, I'm going to share with you how to get a hold of them on this new network.
Cool.
And that algorithm of private set intersection, one, it didn't exist when we were doing the original Web 2.0 companies. But we need that because otherwise, if we just expose everybody's contacts to everyone else, it's going to be a disaster. You know, Facebook is right to protect users by locking down their social graph. It also gives them a walled garden and is kind of terrible, but they aren't wrong about protecting users.
So Rabble, what can I today export from Twitter? What should I be able to export from Twitter? First part of the question. Second part of the question, what does it take for you to be able to take it and let us continue life there?
So right now you can export from Twitter, you can find your stuff and you get all of your data, but you don't get your follow relationships. Interestingly enough, the Scuttlebutt app that Jay Graber wrote for Scuttlebutt is an app that lets you cross-post from Twitter and get your post from Twitter and go into Scuttlebutt. So that was actually the app she developed, you know, while she was working as a developer at Zcash. So at the moment, Planetary and Scuttlebutt, it's, you know, it's basically beta quality. Like, it's funky. There's rough edges. There's things that don't sync very well. You can move over, set up your thing called a room server, which is a shared identity server where you can find other people and group a community. Think of it a little bit like a, you know, like a Mastodon server. You set that up, you could use it, you could bring together a community. That all works. You know, and I think we're ready for early adopters. We're ready for explorers. We're not ready for that mass market. And that's my worry, is that, you know, the app protocol isn't ready for it. There's a bunch of other interesting emerging protocols, PETA Panda, Nostr. One, Farcaster, just got funding from Andreessen Horowitz. It's not a bad protocol. It's more cryptocurrency focused, but like, and the thing is, we're all playing with the same Lego pieces, but the question is, like, how do we make the Lego piece, like,
right? We
don't have any kit. We don't have any design. Like, there's nothing like, I'm going to buy the thing that gives me the, you know, the house and the instructions on how to build it. We're still building all these cool Lego pieces, and we need more apps like Planetary where you don't have to understand how the keys work. You don't have to understand, you know,
right.
You just go to a web page and click a link and have it connect, and you don't have to understand how the underlying parts work. And to go from, you know, like, I can set up my own Bitcoin wallet and run it, you know, on the command line, to Coinbase is a lot of work.
Are the right people, it sounds like you're in communication with Jay and company. Are the right people talking?
So I think a lot of the right people are talking. We had the Decentralized Web Conference in August that was organized by the Internet Archive. Another group, Unfinished Live, had a pretty decent conference in New York last month. They're not collaborating with everyone. Like, we still lack a bunch of collaboration, and we still need to learn from each other better. And it's not clear if one or any of these emerging protocols will actually succeed. But I'm super excited because these protocols say that what we have is a digital public space.
Yes.
And that digital public space needs to be run as a commons and owned by various different participants and not run as a shopping mall. What we have now with Facebook and TikTok and Twitter and Snapchat are shopping malls. It feels like a public space. It feels like your space, your accounts, your followers. But the reality is that it's a commercially owned space with opaque rules. no ownership of your social connections or content or your name. And those rules change all the time. And the worst case is people's accounts get deleted, but usually it's algorithmic manipulation or just not being able to, say what you want. And that doesn't mean like hate speech, just like you should own the keys to your own house.
I wonder whether there's a development here. You look at, let's say, podcasts, right? There were pioneers like Leo there. And then companies come in and say, we're going to, Spotify says, we're going to take over this space and we're going to love this space. And then it gets kind of ruined. New York Times and blogs and so on and so on and so on. And Twitter and Facebook and so on. But I think that then it kind of cauterizes the wounds, and out of that can grow new things that have learned the lessons. And my view is it's a very long, this internet thing is a very long-term build. And this mall phase, went wrong, and people like me were wrong about some of the companies here. But out of that maybe comes a new devotion to saying we're going to make a commons and mean it.
Well, we've learned lessons, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We had to try these things. And I think the lesson here, and we're, in a way, I think what you're doing is starting over and saying, all right, I got it. I get the lessons we've learned. So if we were going to do this right, what are the fundamental things we have to solve first, and then build on that, instead of just, it was a crazy time, and just cobbling everything together on Ruby on Rails. And I think the problem is right now what you're doing is infrastructure, and it's not obvious even to me, and I think I'm a little sophisticated, how to use this and what it would mean to me, and whether it could replace Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or any of that stuff. And I have faith that it will, and it can, and it should. And that's even more important than anything else. That needs to. It should. This is the right way to go about doing this.
Yes.
And so is that a fair characterization? You're building the infrastructure at this point.
I mean, we've been building the infrastructure for a bunch of years. There's still more infrastructure to build, but if you don't build the infrastructure at the same time that you have people using it, and learn from people using it and adapting from it, then you're building the wrong infrastructure.
Right.
That's the lesson of Google Plus. It's like they went and they spent all this time and all this money, and then all of a sudden the users didn't use the app and the platform the way they wanted the users to use it, and they got in a giant fight with their users and everybody walked away.
Right. And then it ain't a platform, by the way. Yeah.
Well, and that's one of the great lessons, as you said, from Twitter, is that Twitter was best when it let its users forge its direction.
Absolutely. So we're building those pieces. We're part of a larger community that's building those pieces. We need users to be testing it out and playing with it and pushing it forward. We obviously need funding in the space. But we also need developers, like people coming in and building stuff and saying, okay, this is what works. This doesn't, I'm going to build my own thing, or I'm going to build on top of other stuff. We're about to release what we call it Scuttle-Go, which is a Go language SDK for building Scuttlebutt applications.
Nice.
I like this.
Is this all in Go?
The people who've heard of.
Why Go? Is this all in Go?
So Scuttlebutt is in a bunch of different languages. We have implementations in JavaScript, Go, Rust, Elixir, Java, Python, Kotlin. The stuff we use at Planetary is in Go. I don't want to get into an argument about programming languages and stuff like that, but JavaScript works great in the browser. It doesn't work great as a native app.
Yeah.
And so that's why we built it around this open source library that we've released called Scuttle-Go, so that other people can build their own applications on top of it.
Once you see how Scuttle-Go works, if you want to write it in Lisp, you can.
Exactly.
You're doing God's work, man. God's work.
I absolutely. I really want to support you. The problem is you download Planetary and it's not immediately obvious what's next. And
I'm on Android.
Well, I got Planetary.
Yeah, so
I love it. It's a beautiful app, by the way. It's incredibly well crafted. I just don't know what to do with it.
So the next thing we're launching are these things we call name room servers. So that's
what you need.
You could,
like Discord.
You can register. Exactly. So you could register leolaporte.planetary.name or whatever domain name you wanted it to be. You can share that URL. People can see your content.
There you go.
what you choose to publish, some of your discussions, but also then there's a QR code and a link that will load you up and connect you in any of the Scuttlebutt apps.
Perfect. So
that they can gauge. And so that's the thing we're launching next week. It's been a long road in the process to make that work.
That's exciting.
But I'm super excited about that because, you know, if I say, you know, oh, find me on Planetary and Scuttlebutt, my username is capital O 473, you know, and I go on for 65 characters, no one will ever do it.
Right. QR code's a good idea. So really, you know, when we started this Club TWiT, and we, you know, kind of naively stumbled into Discord as the place where we get together, and it's turned out this is the social network I always wanted. In many respects, except that you don't control the server, you don't control your identity, all of these little things that you've been talking about. But the idea of these rooms where you get together, all of this makes a lot of sense. It's actually a better space to me than Twitter or Facebook or anything else. I guess it's a little like Facebook groups. This makes a lot of that I can understand. I get my head around. But I also really think it's super important that you own your identity, you control your identity, you can move around. I love the idea that there are a variety of clients so you can have it look like you want and behave like you want. I think you're really onto something here. And the only thing that was missing for me is that one last piece of the you know, the end user interface. Like, what do I do?
Yeah.
Now that I'm here. And I think a room is a perfect solution. I like that idea.
So I was, my son is 15 and he's a big gamer, and I was talking to him about coming on this show this morning. And we had this debate about, okay, how is it streaming, Twitch versus Discord? 'Cause he's a big Discord user as a gamer. And what we ended up coming up with is like, Discord is in some ways like Facebook. You have to be two-way. You can't have there's no system by which you could have a follower relationship and a broadcast system.
Right.
And that's what made Twitter scale. And that's what made blogs scale.
Yep.
And inside the Scuttlebutt protocol and the app protocol that Blue Sky is working on, you need to be able to have both. These are the boundaries of the group. So the group has these set of rules. And also, I don't have to listen to you if you want to listen to me.
I don't have to listen to you if you want to listen to me. That's that @reply problem right there. I like
it's also what Google Plus was going to do right.
Yeah. Circles.
Yeah.